it has been a while. My name is Sega Sister, and can you take care of the introduction for me? I seem to be fumbling left and right today.
All right. Hello, everybody. That is Sega Sister, or Venus. I am Green. I am here on her Infodumping
While
series as a guest. And today I'm going to be talking about the lore of Final Fantasy XIV, a game that has consumed the better part of 2 years of my life. Uh, yeah, so you can see the screen, the slideshow set up, yeah?
I can let now then let me see if we can get this screen capture visible. No, I do not want to capture the entirety of the screen. Just the Discord. Mm-hmm. And let's make whoop. Let's make sure it is visible. There we go. Alright, feel
Okay.
free to get started.
All right. So, before I get to yapping, a few disclaimers.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I'm going to be talking about the story and the lore, so there's going to be some spoilers or the gist of the main story. Um, I'm not going to talk about specific character arcs or things that are on a more personal level, but specifically the setting and I guess, the world building of the game. Uh,
Right.
Second, this is a game. This is not a gameplay guide. I'm not going to be talking about how to play jobs or raid guides or anything like. This is purely for story. Third, this is a long ass game, and it has so much content in it. So I'm definitely going to be, glossing over stuff, skipping things entirely, uh, talking about things in lesser detail than they maybe should. Uh, So I've played about 2,000 hours of games, so and I still haven't touched everything. But I this is why I'm condensing it down for something a little more palatable, somewhat.
Somewhat.
If Yeah, if anybody watching has the is interest invested in the story, I suggest you play it yourself. But if you don't want to, there's no pressure. I'm not a cop. Uh, you do not need to understand every bit of lore to enjoy this game. Some people have no idea what's going on in the story, and it's like same thing with Dark Souls.
I mean, of course they don't. It's Final Fantasy.
Yeah. Um, Also, speaking of, you don't need to have played any other Final Fantasy games to enjoy this one. I myself have never touched the series before 14, and I'm having a blast. But from what I do know through cultural osmosis, is that there are hints and nods and references to the other games that if you have played, maybe you'll point at the screen and be like, "Oh, hey, I know what that is." Uh, so I guess we'll just dive right in. So we're going to start with a very fundamental concept to the Final Fantasy games, and that is something called ether. Ether is basically the catch-all word for life energy that flows throughout everything. It's in plants, animals, the earth, individuals, space. It's everywhere, and it's kind of used for everything. It's fuel for magic. It's energy. It's can be used for to power technology. Um, and Aether exists in living beings to a various amount. Obviously, like maybe like powerful mages will probably contain a lot more ether than like a farmhand. But regardless, whenever you die, your ether that you've stored in your body is released and it returns back to the earth. Um,
I see.
Somewhat tangentially to ether is the sixth element. Final Fantasy likes to dabble with elements, and here there are six. lightning, fire, earth, ice, water, and wind. Uh, Pretty straightforward. Now, those first that upper half of the circle that I've doodled, those three are sort of described as astral elements, which are elements of activity. They are in motion, and the latter three, earth, ice, and water, are umbral elements, which are elements related to a passiveness. They are somewhat stoic and continuous. But all elements can be either astral or umbral, or both. And if that sounds confusing, that's kind of because it is. So, for example, an element of astral fire could be a tremendous explosion that's over in an instant, and umbral fire could be the ambient heat of a desert.
Hmm.
Whereas astral water can be a raging tsunami or a torrential downpour, but umbral water is like a fetid alkaline lake. Um, all elements can be and is both astral and umbral.
Mm-hmm.
Now, these terms don't just apply to ether and the elements. Um, we're gonna get that a little bit down the line, but this is generally the map of the world that the game takes place in. Um, they call it the star, but the star basically just means the planet, and it's called Hydaelyn.
Huh.
So I don't know if you can see my mouse here.
I can.
Okay, so the bulk of the game takes place on this continent called Aldenard. It's mostly referred to as Eorzea. We'll take a closer look in a minute, but I'll also go over some of the other greater continents here as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's the Far East, which is mainly called Othard, and it's sort of like an Asia analog. We have like an island nation of Japan. We have like a steppe called the Azim Steppe. There are jungles of Damascus. It is Othard. It's called the Far East.
Hmm.
Down here is called Mercidia. It is kind of a region that hasn't been touched along in the lore a whole lot, but it is the home realm of a lot of dragons. And trust me, dragons will show up a lot more in the future as well.
Mm-hmm.
Way to the west is what we called the New World, but we call it as Tural. It is sort of like an Americas analog where we have Yok Tural, which is South America, mountains, jungles, and Jacques Tural, which is primarily deserts, but a little something else that we'll touch upon later.
I see.
And finally, this big region up close is a continent that sort of connects Eorzea and Othard, and that's called Ilsabard. Ilsabard is home to a nation called the Garlean Empire. We'll also talk about that in a bit, but
Okay.
these clouds basically denote regions that the players aren't really familiar with in the game. Also, we have this island called Thavnair and Old Sharlayan up here. Those will be mentioned eventually. So, taking a bit of a closer look at Eorzea. This image is a bit crunchy, but it was the best I could do. Eorzea is made up of several city-states. The main three being Ul'dah in Thanalan, which is a desert region to the south. Uh, on the island of Vilbrand is the coastal city of Limsa, and sort of to the northeast is the forest region called the Black Shroud, which houses the city of Gridania. A little bit further to the east is a bit more deserty, a little more badlands called Girabania. The city-state of Alamigo rests there, and from there it connects back to Ilsabard. And way over to the northwest is the mountains of Kurthus. This is where the city-state of Ishgard is, and beyond that further is what we call Dravania, which is another region swarming with dragons. So this is basically the bulk of the story for the first half of the MSQ, everything that we have going up so far. But for now, I guess we'll kind of focus on Old Gridania and Limso Imenso.
Okay.
I should also mention, I have no idea how long these streams usually go for, so feel free to cut me off at any time.
It's okay. They tend to go on for 2 hours at most.
Mm,
But
okay, maybe.
some of my friends have been able to condense it to an hour or an hour and a half.
All right. Also, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them right away.
No problem.
Okay. So, the general timeline. Back when I mentioned umbral and astral, those two terms can be used to describe eras of time.
Mm-hmm.
So the earliest bit of history to the Eorzean people is the Age of the 12. The 12 are the native pantheon of Eorzea, 12 gods,
Mm-hmm.
um, each with their own aspects. We don't really need to go into them too much. Sometime after the 12, I'm not really sure, I haven't been able to pin down when, dragons show up on the continent, specifically descending from the sky. And we'll keep
Mm-hmm.
that in our back pocket. Uh, so, the way things go is that it sort of alternates between an umbral era and an astral era. An umbral era being a moment of calamity and upheaval, a dark age, and then civilization rising back up into a golden age, and then rinse and repeat.
Mm-hmm.
This has happened, let's say, 6 times, with each umbral calamity sort of defining cutting off the end of each astral area. And these umbral calamities are all happen to have been divided into the 6 elements. The first umbral calamity was a calamity of wind, so like great tornadoes and hurricanes swept the region, uprooted life as we know it. And then the most recent one was a calamity of water, which was from great floods. And in between there, the other 4 elements sort of happen. That's what that's currently as it is. So at the end of the sixth astral era, everybody thinks like, okay, we've gone through the 6 elements. We're probably going to be fine now. This is foreshadowing. They're not going to be fine for much longer.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're going to take a closer look at 2 specific eras in particular. The third astral era saw the rise of an empire known as the Allegan. The Allegans are pretty much your big predecessor, future tech, but also in the past, um, civilization. You see this a lot in fantasy media. They built
Mm-hmm.
a lot of machines. They built a huge crystal tower, which is still visible in the game. They went to war. They expanded their nation, and King Zande, went crazy. Because he conquered a lot of stuff. He's like, oh man, well, I'm practically immortal. What do I do now? He wanted to capture a dragon. The Allegan Empire went to war with Mercidia, um, and in the process, the Mercidians fought back with the help of one of the first dragons, Bahamut. Um, when I mentioned the dragons coming back down, those dragons were it was one dragon and his clutch of eggs, and Bahamut was one of those eggs. So
Huh.
he's a pretty big deal. He sent the Allegan Empire packing, but they had an answer for it. They trapped him within a satellite of their own creation and launched him into orbit.
Hmm.
That would become a moon, effectively. Later on in the game, we don't know it's a we don't know it's a moon, or we don't know it's a satellite. We think it's a moon,
No.
but it's secretly housing a dragon.
Well, technically, moons are satellites, aren't they? They're natural
True,
satellites.
true, but this specific thing to contain Bahamut is a synthesized creation.
Ah, okay. So not natural.
No, it does not. And then the fourth Umbral Calamity happened, and most of the Allegan technology got buried under the earth. It's you can pretty much any cave or pit in Eorzea, when it goes deep down enough, will probably lead to some Allegan ruins.
Mm-hmm.
And they did a lot of crazy stuff with experimenting with monsters, just sort of brewing them in a lab, Frankenstein style.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, if if anything that goes wrong in this game, it's a 1 in 4 chance that it's the Allegan's fault.
Mm.
Now we'll fast forward a bit to the fifth astral era, the one before the sixth, which is kind of the recent present.
So wait, what was the fourth astral era?
Uh, it's the fourth astral era doesn't really have a lot to mention. It's just kind of I guess, a footnote. But what we're
Okay.
really look what we're really looking at here is the third and the fifth. The fifth saw the War of the Magi. This
Ooh.
is where the magic systems known as black magic and white magic started to come up because we have the city, three more city states at this time before the creation of our of the ones we know, Mach, Ampedor, and Nim, basically got in a big fight. Mach initiated it, and they started using their black magic, which is fire, lightning, and ice to sort of devastate the region and take over things. And then Ampedor, though, developed white magic as a defensive response, drawing upon wind, earth, and water. Nim is sort of tried to remain defensive in this war. They are mostly just in it to protect themselves, but it did not last because Mach kind of wiped their asses.
I see.
Um, because of black magic and white magic draw ether from their ambient surrounding. The earth itself was drained of its magical energy and thus sent a shift in the aether towards water, and that's what caused the sixth umbral calamity, leading to a great flood.
Oh.
Um, that flood sort of led to the three grand companies of Eorzea. Sort of, they're sort of like rescue groups that formed out of necessity to just kind of uh, gather as many survivors as they can, but they would go on to just kind of be like adventuring guilds for the main starting cities game.
Okay.
And now we get to something called primals.
Uh-oh.
So, a primal is a pseudo deity, which is sort of created by various beastmen tribes. Beastmen is the word that we kind of use for some of the more monstrous peoples of Eorzea, like the Sahaugen, the Sylphs, the Almaja. Um, they're not quite like full empires in their own right. They're sort of like tribes that sort of linger on the fringes of Eorzea. But
Mm-hmm.
they sort of, in their sort of fervent desires to sort of protect them from the bad things that are always happening in this world, they
Mm-hmm.
sort of pray to their gods, and by using their own ether, they create those gods, or at least a twisted version of them. Because whenever a primal is conjured into being through fervent worship, they temper their subjects, basically mind controlling them into a very hostile, uh, just very hostile, very combative and zealous, and generally not a good time for the peoples as we know it.
Mm-hmm.
They were a thorn in the Allegan's side way back in the third era, because they it was Bahamut and three primals of their own, which sort of led to Bahamut's imprisonment anyway. The Allegans worked to research that, but they're also a thorn in the side of the Garlean Empire.
Ooh.
So the Garlean Empire is, um, as it stands, a relatively recent faction within the world of Hydaelyn. They hail from that region of Ilsabard, and the Garleans are sort of notable for two main reasons. The first is that they cannot cast magic; it is physically impossible for their biome.
I see.
And secondly, The region of Ilsabard is hostile and cold and very hard to thrive in. So it sort of led the people that were that were forced to make home there very resourceful and adamant to survive by any means possible.
Hmm.
Luckily for them, they also stumbled upon a substance which we call ceruleum. It's kind of like a fossil fuel, but a little more magic inspired. It's blue,
Mm-hmm.
so you know it's magic.
Ah.
A- And by able to harnessing ceruleum, they're basically able to build magic machines, which we call magitech. They can build radios. They can keep themselves warm. They build planes and trains and automobiles. And of course they use them for war.
Of
Uh,
course.
they begin to attack the neighboring regions to the east and west. They currently occupy the regions of Alamigo, and which is a place very close to Eorzea, which is very concerning for the people there,
Mm-hmm.
as well as Boja and Doma, which are closer to the east and touched upon later on in the campaign. They, while they were attacking the east, they saw the power of the primals firsthand, and they were kind of sent packing. And they were like, "Okay, we're at a bit of a disadvantage when it comes to conquering these peoples. So we're going to try and stop anybody from summoning primals so that we can conquer a bit more swiftly."
Mm.
So that's what they plan to do on the western.
Huh.
They invaded Eorzea, um, specifically a region called Mordona, which is a bit central. It's a tactical advantage for them, but it's also a place of great power. That's when the father of all dragons, the first one that I mentioned from before, Midgard Somar, routed them all on his own with his brood. Um, if you, I wish I could have taken a screenshot, but
It's
before
okay.
this, but yeah, there's a region you can visit Mordona, and the area is just absolutely caked in crystal. It is completely rich with ether, and you can see in the lake, Midgard Somar is coiled around a giant Garlean war machine. Um, but doing so created a huge explosion that really did just send a surge of ether into the land. And by using that ether, the Beastmen were able to summon their primals more easily, which kind of means that the Garleans made it worse by trying to intervene.
I see.
Now, the Garleans have now discovered that the moon Dalamud has Bahamut inside of it. And they're like, okay, we could use that to our advantage. Uh, However, when they tried to sort of, upon their first attempt of trying to make contact with it or study it, um, the city state of Boja was almost eradicated. It is a complete, almost like a magical bomb just went off, and it was bad. But the Garlean general in charge of that project managed to convince the emperor to do it again. But
Huh.
this time we'll turn. But this time we'll turn our focus. We'll aim it at Eorzea so that we can use it more effectively. Hmm.
Hmm.
So at this point, a band of adventurers, calling themselves the Warriors of Light, have allied themselves with a couple of scholars from Old Charlian in order to stop this calamity. This would come to be known as the Seventh Umbral Calamity, and they aimed to stop it. Um, so they fight they fight Garlean incursions. They stop monsters. They try and drive back the evil empire from taking over their homes. And the Battle of Cartano sort of marks the final standoff between the Garlean Empire and the Eorzean Alliance. So those three city states came together, unified. It's like, okay, we're going to fight you guys. They failed.
Ooh.
That's a very important part. Bahamut gets unleashed. Chunks of this red moon rain down from the sky like meteors. An entire fucking dragon just goes to town. Lots of lives are lost. The Garleans retreat, and they try and panic at the last second, where they're like, okay, let's try and last ditch effort banish Bahamut somewhere else so that we can do it. They also failed, and then the game starts.
Uh,
So
all of that was just the prologue, huh?
it sort of is like when you boot up Final Fantasy XIV for the very first time, you're given a cutscene that kind of relays that final battle in like 3 minutes, and it is a great cutscene, I will say. However, this is where we get a little tricky. You see, Final Fantasy XIV was a terrible game at launch. It had like awful performance issues. Hardly anybody was playing it. It had the same problems as Final Fantasy XI, which was another MMO, and just it was not good there. But I'm not here to talk about it because I have not played 1.0 as it's called. However, they the developers made the game from the ground up, and it's amazing now. Like it's probably more played than Warcraft at this point, which is really saying something.
Hmm.
So now this is, I guess, the timeline of the game as a whole. So we start over everything I just described about Cartano and the Garleans invading. That was what we call 1.0 or legacy version.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a Realm Reborn is the start of the new game, which is, they made a new game, and it's like, okay, this is our redo, this is our rework. We got to glow up, as they say, and it did so well. They got 5 more expansions. Each like vary to each of them pretty well enjoyed, well received. So this it's good that they got the low point out of the way right away, so that we can feast from what's to come.
Hmm.
So now we talk about A Realm Reborn. This is the part where you make a character and you join the game for the very first time. Um, as of right now, the Battle of Cartano happened 5 years in the past. The Garleans have been a bit quiet. Uh, Everybody is sort of recovering, getting back to their roots. The Eorzean Alliance is a little scattered. It's kind of like a throuple, but it's they're not quite on talking terms.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess this is what we would call the seventh astral era. Things are no, this is, or maybe it would be I'm not sure, but it's the present.
Right.
And I guess you can only define an era after it's happened.
Right.
So this one sort of hits the same story beats as before. Primals, Garleans, things are bad. Go fight them. Go on adventures. Become a hero. But what sets you apart from the rest of the other adventurers going around, and what I mean that is that it's treated like only you have this power, but of course, everybody has this power. Everybody who's playing the game.
Right.
Uh, you are the Warrior of Light. We also call them Wolves, just because it's an acronym. And being a Warrior of Light means that you are blessed by the goddess Hydaelyn herself, the very essence of the planet. And her blessing takes the form of a power known as the Echo. The Echo being the ability to uh, have flashbacks to earlier points in time when context is necessary. It's basically an excuse for you to see cutscenes when you aren't there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as of right now, this power is only shared by one other person, and that's Minfilia, this lady in the front here.
Hmm.
She, along with the rest of this cast, form the Scions of the Seventh Dawn. They were originally like They were also present in 1.0, working, behind the scenes to sort of get the Eorzean alliances to join up and fight together. But now they're coming out of the shadows. Now they're in the spotlight. Now the world sort of knows who they are, and now they're kind of saying like, "Hey, we got to do this again, or else they're gonna kick our ass. The Guardians are gonna kick our asses, and it's gonna be no fun for anybody."
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, a new threat sort of emerges. The minute you see somebody dressed in black robes with a mask and cackling to themselves about some prophecy, you know they're evil. You know they're evil.
Mm-hmm.
We call these guys the Asians,
Okay.
and their motives are currently unknown. But as what happens in A Realm Reborn is that the Garleans find another super weapon from the Alec that they can try and use. Doesn't turn out to them. We beat them. Hooray! Claps all around.
Yay! A
And then
round of applause.
and then
My
we get
camera's not on but I am just, I am
and then
clapping
you're
my.
framed and then you're framed for regicide. But it's okay
Round
because
of applause.
yeah, but it's okay because the science didn't actually poison anybody. They didn't poison that crucial NPC, and we were framed. But still, we're in the hot seat. So we flee to Ishgard, aka Fantasy Prague. Um, it's filled with buttresses and basilicas, and it's all gothic and snowy. And everybody's name sounds French there.
Ah.
So Ishgard has its own history where it's sort of it's a theocracy, which means it's obviously run by a church, an archbishop in this case. This archbishop is leading the denizens of Ishgard against the dragons, the further to the west. This has been going on for 1,000 years, an endless cycle of bloodshed called the Dragon Song War, and it's really just been, a cycle of violence. It's like they kill us, we get angry, we kill them, they get angry, rinse and repeat. Clap your hand.
E. Oh,
And
I'm sorry. I thought that was a cue for me to clap.
no, it wasn't. But surprise, surprise, the dragons aren't actually evil, and the church is the bad guys because they're being puppeted by the Asians yet again to sow more chaos and violence.
I am surprised that the church is the villains.
I was specifically reminded of this meme in the corner, because this is the plot of Heavensward.
Church bad. Dragons good. Church suck because they won't let you fuck the dragons. Of course.
Of course, of course. But of course, we're the good guys, so we put a stop to this war. We kill a big angry worm.
Mm-hmm.
And we fall back in the good graces of the Eorzean Alliance, and we're now one step closer to driving back the Garlean Empire with the help of the Ishgardians at our side.
Yeah.
And some dragons at our side. Now we get to Stormblood. This is sort of a two-pronged approach because we want to get Alamigo liberated. Alamigo was one of the city-states that the Garlean Empire has conquered and taken over. But because Alamigo had such a strong military, this is sort of a sore spot because it's like, oh man, they trounced some of the strongest soldiers in the land. What are we going to do about it? And the Alamegans, now fleeing as refugees to Eorzea, are like, we are so fucking mad. We want our home back. And we're like, all right, bet. But
All right,
we can't
bet.
but we can't do it alone. So we think about, hey, there's some people to the far east who are kind of under the boot of the Garlean Empire, aren't they? I bet they would be helpful because they have fucking ninjas. So we venture to Othard, which is Fantasy Asia. We visit Fantasy China, Fantasy Mongolia, Fantasy Japan, and we help reclaim their ancestral home. We fight more Garleans. Kalu Kalay, more primals, wonderful. And
Hooray.
with their help, we liberate Doma, and then we liberate we help liberate Alamigo.
I see.
Now these two fuckers at the bottom. What we're basically looking at here is Xenosier Galvus, the crown prince of the Garlean Empire, who's got his fucking thumb in all the pies of Doma, and I think it's Zarus Ye Galvus, the current emperor. These two guys fucking suck.
Am I allowed to ask why?
I mean, I think you know why, because they're they're part of a war, like a jingoistic war profiteering conquerors, literally occupying these nations for the sake of their own survival. Yeah, so we fight Xenos, the younger guy, at the end of Stormblood. We kill him, but he sort of comes back thanks to the Ascians. The Ascians definitely like to fuck around with puppeting dead bodies as their own vessels. And by doing so, they kind of renew the Garleans' fervor to fight back against us. And Zarus, the older Chet, we attempt to parlay with him some at the end of the Stormblood post story. He's not a good guy. He refuses to give us even an inch of amnesty, and we're just doubling down. Everybody's got their fisticuffs up, and we're like, all right, we tried to play nice. The gloves are coming off, except now we've got a new problem. Our friends, our beloved NPCs, our scions, they start falling unconscious one by one. Don't know why. Except we do know why, because we get sucked into another dimension. And that's the beginning of Shadowbringers. Now, this other dimension looks a lot like Eorzea. It's got an island, it's got this sort of peninsula that tapers to the south. Except what is this big white ring around everything? What is that?
I don't think that is snow, is it?
It's not snow. It's light. Pure light.
Dang. Now,
we sort of get sucked into this alternate dimension. This world we call Norvran. It's even got a big crystal tower near a big lake. So that's kind of how we get in there. So this is where the lore takes a turn on its head. If you haven't already, for those of you who might be watching and were kind of interested in playing this, I recommend that you stop watching now, because this is where a big spoiler gets revealed. So you can continue watching if you already know what it is. But I'm about to blow all your minds if you haven't. So,
all right, this is your cue to turn away.
So, in Shadowbringers, we learn that there's not just one world. There are 14, in fact.
Wait, just like the number of games this is the 14th game.
Yes. Don't read into that. It's not parallel dimensions where all the other games happen. That's not true.
Bummer.
But what is true is that all these 13 other worlds, we call them reflections, are actually broken off from our world, the original world with Eorzea, Hydaelyn, called the Source. Now, why did the world get shattered into 14 pieces? Well, it's partly because of this guy, but it's the Ascians. It's the Ascians.
Mm-hmm.
So way long ago, way before the age of the 12, before anything else in recorded 14 history, there was a civilization. I guess we'll call them the Almerites. I think that's the name they were given, but we know them as the Asians.
Mm-hmm.
The Almerites sort of lived in this idyllic universe where there was not really any pain or suffering, and it was great. I mean, they were also like making new things to like new creatures to inhabit the world. It was basically like a city of gods, kind of just like Olympus, like a bunch of guys just hanging out, having a good time, studying, making stuff. Like Olympus if it were full of scientists.
Right.
But there was a calamity, of course. Something really big and bad was coming, and they didn't know how to stop it. So they prayed, and they made a primal of their own. That primal's name is Zodiark, and he is considered the antithesis to Hydaelyn. Where Hydaelyn is light, Zodiark is darkness. So these Amorites, they believe that Zodiark will deliver them from salvation, deliver them from doom, and grant them salvation in this calamity. But a handful of other Amorites are like, no, that's a bad idea. We really shouldn't do that. And so from their fervent prayer, they create Hydaelyn. Hydaelyn herself is also a primal.
Huh.
Zodiark and Hydaelyn, they clash, they battle. Hydaelyn comes out on top, and she splits. She is responsible for the split of all things into 14. By doing so, she equally divides all things, including people, into 14 different shards across these shared universe. It's kind of like it, I'll I'll save this comparison for a little later, but uh yes, by
Mm-hmm.
doing so, the Zodiark remains fractured and weakened, so he can't come back. However, the Asians are still around. They survived this splitting, and so they want to put everything back together again. They want to reverse this cosmic Pangea by bringing together the um, the 13 shards back into the source. However, this has happened 6 times already, and if you've been paying attention,
Mm-hmm.
you might know that each of these 6 rejoinings correlates to an umbral calamity.
Yep.
Every time one of these shards rejoins the source, lives are lost on a grand scale.
That's
They're doing
bad.
this, yes, that's why we want to stop them. But from their perspective, they're trying to restore the world to its rightful state of being. And I mean that's also not just like lives are lost on the source, but those other worlds are just fucking gone. They're obliterated.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're trying to stop that. We're trying to stop the Asians from doing that all over again. They're trying to stop this rejoining.
Hmm.
So each of these worlds has had a calamity relating to a specific element. We've seen the 6 mentioned already,
Mm-hmm.
but there's also light and darkness. 2 of these calamities have happened already, but they're still not rejoined. So Nordranch specifically is the first shard. That we call it the first, and it is the realm that has been besieged by light. It is also where we sort of get this understanding that in the first, light is the element of passivity and stasis, and darkness is the element of change. So when we arrive at the first and we're saving the day, we're saving peoples, we're driving back monsters that look like angels, we're heralded as the warrior of darkness. Isn't that interesting?
Hmm.
So Yeah, this fucking douche, Emmett Selk. People are weirdly horny for him. I just gotta say,
He's not even a. Wait, is he a Tumblr sexy man?
he kind of is.
Only kind of.
I only say that because he might have arrived if he arrived on the scene like 4, 7 years earlier, he definitely would have been. You would have seen him lined up with fucking Sans and Nagito and Bill Cipher. Anyway,
And
Emmett
probably
Selk.
wait, if it was 4 years ago, yeah, probably Alistair would be up there with them too.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's yeah. Alistor is already up there. I mean, he's whatever. Anyway, so this is Emmett Selk. He's an Asian, but Asians don't have their own corporeal form. They have to again puppet a dead body. So whose dead body is this? This is Solus Ye Galvis, aka the first emperor of the Garlean Empire,
Oh,
which means that the Garlean Empire has been a creation of the Asians from the outset for the sole purpose of wreaking havoc and chaos in order to imbalance the elements and cause a rejoining faster.
dang.
But you know, we kill him, and once again, hooray!
As we do.
And now things are coming to a head in Endwalker.
Back at it again at Krispy Kreme. Am I gonna
Yeah.
get context?
Uh, yes. So things are getting bad. Um, the like I said, we kill. This is Solus Ego. No, not Solus. Xenos. This is Xenos. We killed him in Stormblood, but he came back. Um, and he's got Asians at his side helping him further along. At this point, he doesn't care about Garlemald at all. He doesn't care if the people live or die. He doesn't care if the capital collapses. The capital collapses, by the way. Um, he just wants to fight us really badly. He wants to fight the Warrior of Light. You. He's
Why?
Because nothing gives him such a thrill as knowing that he might die.
Ah.
There's a quote where the protagonists confront him, and he's being held responsible for all this turmoil to his own nation and the nations beyond, and everyone's like, why would you possibly do this? What reason could you have possibly done this? And he replies, if I had a good reason, would that have made it any better in your minds? And that is kind of a mint villain quote, if I ever do say so. But
Yeah, I
I,
agree.
I I digress. So the Garlean Empire is looking to throw things into chaos. The world's in danger. Things are bad. We got to ask Old Charlian to help us because they have knowledge. They're a nation of scholars, but they don't want to help us. That's weird.
That
And
is
then
weird.
suddenly we think like, okay. We've heard that the capital's collapsed, so that means that the Garlean people are actually suffering. And even if they aren't part of the army, they deserve at least a bit of aid from our end. Maybe that can help things over. So we go to Garlemald. We help a few people. They're slow to trust us, but it's bad for them.
Mm-hmm.
We learn also that they have a transporter to the moon.
Because of course they do.
Of course they do. Because the moon is where Zodiark is being imprisoned. We kill Zodiark also, like surprisingly easy. I thought he would be a bigger deal, but he's not. He's just another boss fight. But what is more important is that the moon is filled with bunnies,
Bunnies!
and I mean that completely truthfully. It is filled with bunnies,
Aww!
specifically a race known as the Loperit. The Loperit were created by Hydaelyn to convert the moon into a spaceship.
Oh my god. I'm sorry for laughing. That just sounds so silly.
I know, they are very silly. They are adorable for being the heralds of the universe. Um, anyway, so the moon is a big spaceship meant to sort of crater all people of Heidelin far, far away. Huh. Why is that? Well, it's because the end of days is upon us.
Of course.
All right. So this is going to get really heady in a moment. So we travel back in time to the era of the Amorites. We meet the Asians in their prime, and we got to learn like, okay, maybe there's got to be something here that tells us what is going on, what is the fate of the world, what's going to happen. And we do find it. We find that they have sent scouts basically out into space, sort of like the Challenger probes, you know? They sent these familiars out into space to sort of see if there's life somewhere else, actually visiting other planets. They find other planets, but it's bad. All these planets are either dead or dying or completely wiped out, uninhabitable, and the scouts aren't all that thrilled. Everywhere in the universe is cold and dead, and the very same might happen to Heidelin too.
Hmm.
So, I suppose the best way to describe what we're actually up against in Endwalker is the very concept of despair itself.
Oh, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, Junko wishes she could get in on this. So there's basically this big cosmic entity out in space that's just saying, what does it matter? Give up, lie down and die. What's even the point? And we're like, and it's gonna consume us. It's gonna fucking tear our planet apart like fucking Galactica.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason we find out that the reason why Charlian isn't willing to help us is because they've sort of bought into this idea that yeah, we need to flee our planet. We need to get up on the moon and ride that shit far, far away. But we say fuck that noise. We don't want that.
No, of course not.
We fight Heidelin herself for the right to deny her wish. Her wish to preserve us so that we can risk it all and save our planet once and for all.
Mm-hmm.
And we do. And even at the end of the universe, the fucking edge of all that is known, Xenos finds us there, and we kill him once and for all. We punch him right in his fucking pretty boy face, and he's kaput. He's out of the picture. I'm pretty sure he's rotting at just a pool of ether somewhere as we speak.
Mm.
And I gotta say, it's a very climactic finish. We've saved everything, and
Yay!
we're feeling pretty good about ourselves.
But then something else happens.
Yeah, it does. So, post Endwalker, we sort of
Bless you.
we learned a bit. Yeah, we learned a bit more about this region we called the Void. Um, in the past, we've only known the Void as just a dangerous region filled with darkness and demons that want to suck out your ether until you're bone. So a pretty bad spot. We learn that it's actually another reflection. Just like the first, which was consumed with light, 13th is the void, consumed by darkness.
Huh.
So, with light being the element of passivity, in the first we saw that nothing was really being born. Nothing. The entire world was just a wasteland where there was nothing. No ether, no plants, no animals, just a empty white wasteland. Except for a small circle of space, which we play around in. In the void, ether is constantly changing here. It's flowing. It can't stop moving. whenever a creature dies in the void, its ether sort of reforges into itself again, or it gets consumed by another void. So nothing really nothing really dies here, and so everything here is just Jones and goosing for some ether. They can't stop.
Hmm.
Mm. So a creature. So we eventually a guy from the void called Golbez. He wants to save the void. He wants to save the 13th, and of course, in order to do that, he needs to destroy the source. We don't want that. We stop him. Hooray, hooray!
Hooray.
And now it's time for the beach episode.
Yay!
Where do we go after saving literally everything? Fantasy Mexico. Uh, so this lovely lion lady, this is Wook Lamat. She comes to us and is like, "Hey, my nation is going to go through another rite of succession to sort of decide its new ruler, and I kind of want your help." And we're like, "Yeah, let's do it." So we venture across the seas to that westernmost continent I mentioned, Tural, in the capital city of Tuliolal. Um, so Wuklamat has some siblings, and well, one of them is cool, the other one isn't, and the other claimant for the throne is a real dickbag. So, kind of like, hey, if you help me succeed, we're kind of going to be ensuring that this peace that we've worked so hard for is going to be maintained. It's going to stay as it is. Tural was a region that was pretty divided by its own conquest and trifles. Now it's in an era of peace, tentatively, and we want to keep a lid on that. So we're
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, we'll help ensure that it doesn't fall back into more conquering stuff. Um, so yeah, we help Wuklamat win, and she's very thankful for it.
Yay.
And then another reality merges with ours.
Which one?
Um, so in the northern region of Tural, Jacques Tural, um, there's this big dome that sort of just kind of appears out of nowhere, this field of energy. And inside that field is a piece of a kingdom once known as Alexandria. Um, I'm not quite sure how this actually unfolded, but Alexandria was a realm beset by lightning storms. I'm thinking this is the realm that got destroyed when the lightning umbral calamity happened, but it's
Mm.
still here, so I don't think it rejoined. But the thing is, they sort of plop themselves down in the middle of Tural, and they want to suck our souls out.
Oof.
So the weird thing is about Alexandria is that it's weirdly high tech. It's probably like it's the most cyberpunk thing we've seen in a long while. And we've been to the moon. We've been in a spaceship. Uh, we have an entire city that just looks like the inside of a gaming PC. And the
Mm-hmm.
thing is that these people keep themselves alive by banking souls. Anytime they are killed in like an accident or something, they get a new soul and they just pop back to life. But
Huh.
if they die from old age, their their soul they don't get a new soul, and everybody who knew about them forgets they exist to prevent the feeling of loss.
Huh.
So the queen has literally engineered this immortality device specifically to keep her people alive and happy, even at the expense of other people. And that other people is the people of Tuliolal.
Hmm.
So Wuklamat is taking that pretty hard. It's like, hey, look, I know she's a queen. I'm a queen too, but we can't let her do this. If she's gonna fight to keep her nation alive, so will we. And so we do stop the Queen of Alexandria. the people are still pretty chill, so they can hang out.
Okay.
And yeah, that's just another Tuesday. That's where the main story currently ends. I imagine there's going to be more in the future, but it hasn't happened yet.
Ah.
And in conclusion, Y'shtola Rule is best girl.
I mean,
I mean,
she
uh,
cute.
I mean, look at her. Yeah, there's a lot of best girls in 14,
Yes.
but Y'shtola is best.
Yes. The best of the best.
Okay, so I guess I'm pretty much at the end of my slideshow. This is the final slide. Any question?
Okay, why don't you talk more about best girl?
Okay, so Y'shtola, she is one of the Scions of the Seventh Dawn. Hold on, let me
Mm-hmm.
uh, yeah, here she is. She's up front. You meet her pretty much at the start of the game. Um, and she's eager to help. She's just kind of she's just kind of there at the start because there's a lot of characters that come up front, especially compared to everyone else here. Haven't really gotten the time to sort of develop her character. But in Stormblood, she, I think she dives in front of someone to protect them. It might be the Warrior of Light. If I'm remembering that correctly, I love that. It might be someone, might be just another NPC, but I can't remember. She gains the ability to. She loses her eyesight, but she gains the ability to see ether.
Oh.
Basically, uh, and by being able to see ether, she's basically able to see most of her surrounding. So, just like in 99% of Japanese media, if a character is blind, they have a superpower that lets them not be blind. I call it the Daredevil effect.
Ah, okay. I'm suddenly
Uh,
reminded of Toph from the Avatar series.
Actually, yeah, that's not a bad comparison at all. Um, so yeah, she's basically able to see ether. Um, in the in between Stormblood and Shadowbringers, Y'shtola is one of the first to sort of pass out, and there's a bit of a time discrepancy. Sort of like most of the characters get a pretty fancy glow up, Y'shtola included, because I mean that dress just chef's kiss. Um,
Yes.
yeah, she I think she's had two other NPCs down bad. I mean that kind of I feel like that kind of speaks to it. But those other two NPCs, one she politely lets down, and the
Ah.
other she just absolutely emasculates.
Oof.
Yeah, you can just hear everybody in the background just going like, "Oh, damn! She called you little, man." Um, I mean, yeah, I mean, she's just got like a real panache to her. She knows she's better than you. Hmm. All right. I guess as far as the other scions,
Yes.
we've got Alphino and Alize. They're twins, brother and sister. Um,
Mm.
they are probably the ones that I mean, Alphino sticks with you longer, but they're they kind of come into their own as like they start off as like snobby nobles who like think they know better than the common folk, but then they kind of get a bit more down to earth and mellow out. They're kind of nerds. I mean, Alphino's a nerd.
I mean, we do
Uh,
love us our nerds.
yeah. This guy up here, this is Louis Swa. He is Alphino and Alexei's grandfather,
Ooh.
and he's the guy who sort of devised the plan to try and stop uh Bahamut back in 1.0. He
Oh.
failed, and he's dead now.
Oof.
Uh, we've also got, yeah, I mean, so we got Minfilia. She also uses the Echo. She's kind of the leader of the Scions. Um, she's really keen to like. like sacrifice herself like at the drop of a hat, which is a bit concerning, especially because Thancred is Thancred. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Thancred really likes Minfilia, and when she gives herself to protect everybody, he's like, damn, I kind of wish she hesitated a little more. Thancred has depression in like every expansion. He turns into a dad, figuratively.
Of course.
Then we got Urianger. He is an elf. He speaks in cursive. He gets a big glow up at
Speaks
Shadowbringers.
in cursive.
Yeah, he's always like, "Oh, doth mine eyes perceive me? Oh, pray tell, wouldst be now must needs be." It's like, dude,
Oh,
he
he's
is
British.
he's not even like British. He's like a guy who's like way into Shakespeare
Oh.
and uses it in modern day. Um, and then we have Yida and Papalimo. I guess they're just a pair of buddies. They don't really do a whole lot. Yida pops off in Stormblood. When you find out that she's not Yida, she's actually her sister. It was a bit confusing, but uh, yeah, it's whatever. She's from Alamigo, so she sort of takes front at the forefront in the rebellion. Uh, and then in Heavensward, we meet Estinian, the Azure Dragoon, and he is the epitome of a D&D character with low charisma.
I
So
see.
Estinian is a dragoon, which means he basically fights dragons. He, uh, he, I mean, he's obviously fighting in Ishgard in the Dragon Song War. He's fighting around, and then he mellows out. It's like, man, dragons killed my parents, but yeah, I guess I have to be over it now if this is gonna end. He chills out. He stops being the Azure Dragoon, but then he becomes the Azure Dragoon again.
Eh?
And it's very funny because he joins the Scions informally, and he doesn't really have like the scholarly knowledge or like the leadership to really really take the lead in like Alphino does. So
Ooh.
he just kind of hangs in the back and it's just like just tell me where I need to go. Just tell me what to kill. And I commend him for that. He's also terrible with money.
Oh, aren't we all?
Yeah. All right. Anything else?
And that will be it from me. I wonder if the audience has any questions outside of how is everybody? Uh, excuse me. Um, I'm all right, Zaya. What about you, Green?
I'm doing well.
Well, that's wonderful. That's great. Um, I guess if nobody's asking questions, I guess we can call it a night.
Okay. Well, there you have it.
That's Final Fantasy XIV.
That's everything. That's everything I've got for you.
Alrighty then. I had fun.
All right. Yeah. This has been a while. It's been a while since I got the ability to yap to somebody about this.
Oh, poor Zion feels knackered from work. I'm sorry.
All right. Well, I've said my piece.
Alrighty then. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see